Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 204, All Hat and No Cattle, The Lie of the Ego. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host. I'm here today in 818 Studios with my producer.
Good morning, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 204 of the Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, I want to welcome you to a brand new week. I hope you are doing well. And it's going to be a good one. I feel it.
Yeah, me too.
Deep in my
too.
bones.
Today is a great day. As one of my favorite sayings is, it's a great day to be alive.
Yes.
And, today is what you make of it. And I know a life is happening to all of us. Lots of unexpected things for many people I know right now. But you know what I notice is the people that are moving through it with grace and love are the ones that are doing their spiritual work, the ones that are still seeking to find, okay, where is God in the midst of this? So, of course, friends, this is what we hope you're doing, is one of the reasons we have the show. And, friends, I'm going to be honest, I need a little encouragement this morning. And Dave, you don't have to totally caretake me. I want to hear from our listeners and our viewers, because I was feeling I've just been feeling a little bummed out. I haven't heard from people lately. It's not a financial thing. It's more like, how are we doing? Are you just accustomed to it? Am I boring you? I need a little uplift today. And I am thinking about another new show. My only hesitance is to make sure that, that people would support it. But anyway, so I need a little encouragement today. So if you can reach out through the website, experienceofthesoul.com, or my other site, cynthiaaliceanderson.com, feel free. I'd love to get a word of encouragement.
Yeah, you can reach us at the experienceofthesoul.com/contact. That would be the easiest, most direct way to reach out. Or you can leave a review over at Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever. That helps as well. But no, we just want to hear from you. I think that's good.
Every now and then I need a good word.
Well, you're so used to platform ministry that you need an amen,
Every now and then I need an amen.
Every then
yeah.
You need to pause and just make sure that folks are getting what you're throwing out there.
Yeah. Well, and Dave, give us our show title today, because I think I'm the opposite of this at times. So give us the show title.
The title is All Hat and No Cattle. I love that. And I got to be honest, I had to look it up because I'd never heard this before. It turns out it's an old Texas saying.
Totally. The first person I ever heard say it was from Texas. That's a fact.
Yeah. Can I give the definition?
Yeah, go ahead. I think it's
funny. The definition is a description of a person that is all talk and no substance, full of big talk but lacking action, a person who cannot back up their words, a fake, a pretender.
A pretender. Right.
And that's all hat and no cattle. That is the most Texas thing I've ever heard.
Isn't it? I know. Well, and it was funny. One time I was in the airport. I think I was going to like a minister conference or something, but anyway, that's not important. I was in line and there were all these ranchers because of course we were going to Kansas City and there was a big ranching, a conference for ranchers there as well. Anyway, and several ranchers, I was around, several were women. And they both saw this guy. They didn't know I was listening. I was right behind him in line. You know how when you're in the airport, it used to be, you were 2 inches away from people because we were flying Southwest and we were all lined up. Anyway, and the woman said, "Oh, man, not him. He's all hat and no cattle." And I thought it was so funny because I really noticed these women because I hadn't met a lot of women ranchers. I've known ranchers. I've been in more horse barns than most, and on more ranches than probably most for somebody who didn't grow up in the West. I've spent a lot of time around those type of environments, and I'd never seen that many women ranchers. And they had everything they had was kind of like their briefcase was this hand-tooled leather briefcase that I still want today. And I was really impressed by them. I thought it was so funny when they said the phrase that I'd only heard a Texas person say, he's all hat and no cattle. And when you hear and in the horse world, it's sometimes like, oh yeah, the bigger the hat, the bigger the ego.
Right. No, and in motorcycle words, in motorcycle terms, I've heard that called a squid.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Some, like if somebody who like dresses in all of the like the Harley gear but doesn't actually ride a Harley, or they might be a Yamaha rider or an Indian rider or something like that, and they're just like decked from head to foot, but they actually don't ride. Right, but
that is too funny. But
and we're not talking about just having a Harley, but having like an actual Harley, like motorcycle jacket and all of that stuff. But they don't actually. It's
that's hilarious. That's called a squid.
Squid, that's the term, and I'm sure it's somewhat derogatory. But
you think?
But
is all hat and no cattle, and the reason which you didn't say in parentheses is the lie of the ego, right? All hat and no cattle, and then in parentheses, the lie of the ego, because friends, I tell you, we all want to look good.
Yeah.
There
was an episode of Friends where Joey got there was a woman thought that the Porsche was his, like he was standing next to a Porsche, and and she thought it was his, and so it wasn't his. He was just standing next to it.
He just happened to be standing there.
So he happened to be there, and so he started like dressing in all the Porsche gear, and and the Porsche eventually drove away. But he's like, oh, I'm really loving all this attention. So he put up a bunch of boxes and covered it in a tarp so it looked like a Porsche was there. And the idea was it was all about his ego, and he liked the way it made him feel and the status it gave him, but there was zero substance.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Well, if you go on Instagram or Facebook, that's exactly what you'll see. I've seen it so many times. I've seen ministers do it. I've seen business people do it, therapists, life coaches. I mean, yeah. One of my favorite life coaches, who actually we're going to have on the show really soon, is the opposite of that. And that's what's so interesting. You can really see, if you hang in there a little bit, you can really see what somebody's really about. Like she'll sometimes post an image. She'll post, Instagram image, and it'll be perfect, like with a filter, and her hair is perfect, her makeup is perfect, and all that. And then she'll post another picture right by it that says, what I really look like. Mm-hmm. She'll have on glasses, and her hair is kind of messy, and they're both her, but sometimes we get a little too worried about what people think, and it's hard because of the the world we live in. Everybody says, well, you have to do these things. You have to be on Instagram. You have to be on social media. So, and we've talked about that many times, both of us, our journey with that. But the point is that when we attach to this outer image and forget the real work, then we're really out of alignment with God's good for us. It's that simple.
And it's such a fine line. Like, Shannon and I have been kind of launching this online composer community. And so we're doing
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, thank you. We've been doing a lot of like artwork, and I do thumbnails on YouTube. And I do find myself like going in and maybe brightening the whites of my eyes a little bit, or maybe taking a little bit of the brightening up my smile a little bit. But it's a fine line, isn't it? Between like, okay, let's do some polish versus, making myself like losing 30 pounds in my face or something. I don't know. But where is that line though? Where would you say that?
Well, I think that's a really great question. And I think it comes back to a one-word answer. It's really, it almost sounds too simple, but it's like, what is your intention about it? Like, what is motivating it, So if your intention is to look your best so people listen to your message and your message is going to help them, well, that's a good thing, because, we all have to look our best. Some of the, Eckhart Tolle doesn't take a picture with broccoli between his teeth. He has an image you go, oh, there's Eckhart Tolle. He looks zenned out and prayed up, right? He's not going to be jumping around and expect somebody to come to his,
right,
program. So, I think we want to just provide a image that is consistent with really who we are and how we walk in the world, And so if we're making ourselves up to be some grandiose thing, then, and, we're working with 5 people, that's a little bit iffy.
Right.
That's a little bit iffy. And it's an interesting thing because so many of us have learned, vision it, make it happen. There was a time I was getting some video work done and I was looking at different places, to get some pictures taken. And I was like, well, you know what, though? I have not actually spoken here. I realized that it would have looked like that was a venue. Now, I have spoken at nice big venues, but it just so happened that where I wanted my picture, I was like, I want a picture of myself on a big stage, so people know I'm capable of that. And I'm like, but you know what? So I backed off from that because I said, well, when I get there, that will be an honest, authentic picture.
It would be like me, I guess, taking a studio picture in one of Full Sail's like big giant studios, with me and this, millions of dollars worth of gear behind me, and then using that as my like studio picture.
Right, instead of just your studio picture.
It projects the idea of this is my workspace. So,
well, and what I think is so interesting, because energetically, usually people feel it anyway. People feel anyway when you're authentic or not. Like, when we did our Experience of the Soul, podcast channel 200th.
Yeah, the live show,
all those pictures from that event were exactly where we were. And I've wanted pictures to look like that for 4 years. And when they did, it was real. It was real. And I love the lighting. I love our logo on the wall. That was amazing.
Yeah. And I'll put a link to that episode because you can see those pictures. But you're absolutely right. That is 100% what it looked like.
That is 100% our experience. And so even though I wanted that for 4 years, I've had people approach me, one who's offered me a free marketing and a lot of money, but the energy for me was not a match. And it was so hard to say no to that because it's like, well, I want to reach more people, but I'm not going to sacrifice what I believe in to do that, Right. So the ego always wants to look good, So just sit with that for a minute, friends. The ego wants to look good. Your ego wants to look good. But what's so amazing, and I said this in a class, I don't know, maybe in the last couple of years, somebody was really crying in the class. They hit something really deep. And they said, oh, I didn't want to cry. And I said, I'm glad you're crying. And she, what? Well, why are you glad I'm crying? And I said, this is the most spiritual work you've ever done right here. Because you're in your pain, and until you touch that, you cannot rise up and out. We're here. Nobody's judging you. And the group was 100% loving, supportive, lifted her up. And that's the real work, friends, not looking good. I wanted to mention what we've seen in our culture recently, the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, and about celebrities in general, because I put Brad Pitt in this category as well. Any of the big stars, Tom Cruise, any of the big stars, that there is such even though they are celebrities now. So they are celebrities. But the images they put out, the parts they portray, sure make it seem like everything is going great. And there's all this emphasis on the outer image and what you wear and how you look and what size clothes you wear and all that. Well, we see what's behind the curtain right now in that trial. And I'll be honest, that's been heartbreaking to watch. I've watched a little bit of it every single day. And my hope for those two is some kind of healing. But the amount of dysfunction and dis-ease and addiction that is running that whole thing. But hey, but they look good. You know? But hey, they look good. At $50 million, okay, we look good. But you see, the quality of life is not good. If you ask me, what we're seeing is two people who've been living in hell together. But for the pictures, we look good. So, friends, I mean, what were you going to say, Dave? Sorry.
If anything, it just outlines that regardless of, however much money you think, it's yeah, I mean, money doesn't buy you happiness. I mean, I get that money makes a lot of things possible, but here we have somebody.
You gotta have money to live, yeah.
At the absolute, Johnny Depp, at the absolute pinnacle of his career, one of the highest paid actors on the planet, and you realize just all the unhappiness going on.
Oh, it's
the dysfunction, depression, all of those things, which happen to all of us, And you think because of the image that they must have it easy. They must have it all worked out.
They have everything worked out. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and the thing I always notice, the celebrities I always tend to be attracted to are the ones that are doing good for the world. And I really eventually want to get Matt Damon on the show because he's co-founded an organization called water.org. It's about clean, usable water around the world. And I have a dear friend who's his executive director for the organization. And I've supported him on social media, and things like that. So here's somebody, he is a megastar, clearly. He makes millions. I think in one of his movies I read, I think he said 32 words or something, but he ended up making like $30 million. So it's like $1 million a word. But what he's doing with his celebrity is very, very different. Now, I don't know what his home life is like, but it's not just about how you look and how much money he makes. He's making a difference in the world.
Right.
So there's like substance behind that. And what I notice is I don't see Matt Damon doing a lot of commercials. I don't see Matt Damon talking about, I don't see that emphasis on the outer in the same way. So again, I'm projecting onto what I'm seeing, but I'm using them as examples for like, we can do the same things. I mean, the people I love the most in my life are the people that are actually doing something with the life they've been given, not focusing on what everybody thinks.
Well, it's like comparing, Elon Musk and Bill Gates. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect, and I'm not saying like
sure.
Bill Gates. I'm not putting him up on a pedestal, but seeing like what he has done, Bill Gates, like almost eradicating malaria, right? And really. I mean, one of them is kind of like Bruce Wayne, and the other one is Lex Luthor. So I'll let you decide who I think.
You decide which is
I'm just
which.
saying, one of them is trying to wipe out malaria, and the other one bought Twitter. I'll let you decide. Again,
right.
I know
I get
nobody's
it.
perfect, and so I'm not elevating one to sainthood.
Right. No, it's just using them as examples, to think about our own process. It's easier to see in other people, which is why we do that, right? And it's why I mentioned the trial in the first place, because I've always really liked Johnny Depp, I have to say. But I've always been really concerned about his addiction because I grew up around so much addiction. Every time I look at him, I would think, oh, he's high. He's on cocaine. And so I've always been really concerned and my heart really hurts for both of them because clearly, there's a lot of need for healing. And what I will say, what I think every time I see that is if they would just hear the message we have on this channel, if they would just hear that, like, it's really about their soul. It's not about all that. I mean, yes, we all have to be presentable. We all have to look good. We all want to feel good. But what's under all that is we all want to be healthy at the level of the soul. And then what we project out is light, is love, is power, is strength. And then it's real, and the reason, I think one of the reasons this is so shocking to everyone is a lot of people believed the image, but it's not shocking to me in the slightest. I mean, not at all. Not at all. Because the emphasis is so strongly on the outer. And so, friends, we don't want to walk around like one of these people that's all hat and no cattle.
Right.
Right. We want to be the real thing. So we're going to pause right there. We'll be back in just a few moments after these brief messages. Welcome back. Again, we're glad you're with us. I hope you are really thinking about the topic today, all hat and no cattle, the lie of the ego.
Yeah, and I have an update on
it?
my squid term. It's not only a motorcyclist who wears all the gear, but also overestimates their abilities, their overconfidence. So they think that putting all that on has somehow, it would be like me putting all of this gear on, and it's the gear and the outward appearance that makes the skills, that makes me it's more confidence, ego kind of thing.
Oh, yes. And that is really true. That is really true. And, I'm just going to say this, friends, that I have really seen this with ministers.
Careful.
I'm going to say it. No, I'm going to say it because
this is authentic.
And these are people I really adore. I've known people over the years. Some of them I was educated with, and sometimes at Unity Village, everything was so positive. People were not getting real feedback about their level of skill. And as they went out to, work in churches, it's like if you just have 20 people sitting there and you're never growing, chances are you might be part of the problem. But so often at the school, they learn so much about projection and everything. They think everything's about them and there's no work to be done. So I've seen it a lot in ministers, and I've had many, reach out to me asking me questions about, how to grow a church and everything. And when I bring up the idea of coaching, it's like they are, well, what do you mean? No. I mean, it's a complete shutdown. And it's like, well, if your ego is that big that you can't handle coaching from a colleague who loves you, boy, it's all hat and no cattle, friends. Right. And I mean, I've seen it over and over. And so the ego just wants so badly to look good and be right. It will fail while it's lying all the way, because really it's ultimately a lie.
Yeah, well, and if you think that wearing all the rancher gear equips you to go on a cattle run, okay, taking it back to motorcycles, right?
Right.
Because ultimately a squid rider poses a danger not only to themselves but to everyone else around them.
Everybody. Oh yes.
And so
yes.
You got the hat on and you're ready to go on a cattle drive. And so you have all of this cattle behind you, and now suddenly things go out of control because you think that the hat qualifies you for I'm trying to blend our metaphors here.
Well, no, I think it works.
Yeah.
My mind was just several different places. For some reason, I was reminded of that crazy movie City Slickers.
Oh, heck yeah. Yep.
Remember that movie? But no, I was just thinking too, I had mentioned on the show, a while back that I'd been doing martial arts and my love of it has really deepened. But I'm going to tell you something, in martial arts, you're put on the map. When you start talking, they're like, show me, So you're not going to get away with that in that setting. And, Dave, I've noticed with musicians too, when I was in Seattle and I was really gigging a lot, I remember I came into this wind ensemble, and it was really a lot of fun because there were a lot of pros that played in there. There were a lot of players like from the Pacific Northwest Ballet that just loved to play and were doing it out of love for the conductor, who was a dear friend and stuff. So anyway, I was hired to do some percussion. And I couldn't find it. My first rehearsal, I was a little late, which I'm never late, as you know. And I walked in, and I just, quietly got out my stuff, and was ready when, we kicked in. And anyway, the conductor came up to me later. Her name was Kathy. She's a really talented musician. And she said, "Thanks for not being the typical drummer." And I go, "Oh, you mean warming up so loud for everybody to hear?"
Oh my gosh.
And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I'd never do that." And she goes, "That's how I know you're an accomplished player." Because most drummers, what they do, and you know this, Dave, as a drummer, she said, what most drummers do is come in and they warm up as loud as possible. And they're always late on the entrances, or they're in the wrong spot, or the timpani are not tuned properly, or they're not paying attention. She said, so the best professionals just come in and get their gear ready and are just ready when it's time to start.
Yep.
And the ones who are talking the most, they're always the worst musicians. It's so interesting. And the real pros always know there's more to learn. Mm-hmm. Some of the best musicians I've ever played with, and I've played with some amazing musicians, they're like, "Oh, cool. I like how you did that." Right. I'm like, "Really? Oh yeah, I wouldn't do it that way." Or they're like, "Oh, have you ever listened to so-and-so the way he does?" They're always learning. The best professionals, that's what I know. And because they don't have to have ego, because there's a certain level of proficiency. So, they have ego in the sense of they have a certain level of competence. So you don't have to pretend when you have a certain level of competence. Dave, you've always been that way with composition. You don't talk about it very much because you don't have to. The work shows, like my dad used to say, and my dad was really big on humility. And he would say, if you're good at something, honey, you just don't have to talk about it. And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
And in my family, this has been frustrating to people who've met my family. When you meet them, they're never going to ask you what you do for a living. They're not going to ask you how much money you make. They're going to say, "Hey, you want a beer?" They're gonna, "Hey, I just made you want some biscuits? Let's eat."
Right.
It's just going to be like, but it's never going to be about what you are in the world. It's never going to be like about this big thing you've made up for people to see. It's never going to be about that. That was just drilled out of us 100%.
It's interesting that you mentioned like the composing, because I feel like that's something I honestly kind of struggle with because, I am super proud of it. But you're right. I don't enter. "Hi, I'm Dave. I write music for TV." "Hi, I'm Dave. I write music for TV."
Right?
Exactly. "Have you watched football?" "That's me." Right? I don't do any of that. But at Full Sail, I kind of have to do that a little bit because on day one, the students that come to Full Sail, they expect industry professionals. And so it's a really fine line of kind of like, I don't want it to come off as bragging, but I also need to I only have these students for a short period of time, and I need to kind of say, "Hey, I know what I'm talking about. Just jump on board. Trust me. I know what I'm talking about." But I do appreciate you saying that because it's something I'm super conscious of.
Well, and it's the same for me, with the show. Recently, somebody, actually I was getting my hair cut, and the woman who cuts my hair is a big follower and financial supporter of the show. And it really touches me that she is. And I was checking out, paying my bill, which is always a very reasonable. And I was going to pay my bill, and she goes, "Oh, hey, RCA has my favorite podcast ever," she says to the people up front. And they go, "What's your podcast?" I said, "Well, it's about the spiritual journey." I said, I never used to say this, and I've gotten to where I say, so I own a podcast channel. I founded it several years ago, and the main show that I do is called Authentic Spiritual Journey. And the woman goes, "I love that. I love the name of that." I said, "Well, if you're spiritual at all, you'll totally get it. You'll totally get it. And I said, we just did our 200th episode. She said, it sounds like you're proud of it. I said, it's been a labor of love. And I never used to say that much. I would say like, oh yeah, I do a podcast, and it is a fine line, but sometimes I think I could be more, about it, And so what I would say to our listeners is I want you to help us share it, because I don't want to come across as one of these people who's going to charge you $20,000 just for me to show up. I don't need that. 4,000 or 5,000, yeah, but not 20.
Well, and you even kind of, I remember when you stepped down from pulpit ministry, you kind of explored that, the corporate speaking and all of that, and and you discovered, even though there was money on the table, there was financial reward to be had there. You realized that wasn't yours to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll do some speaking events, different things. If anybody on a corporate level is listening, I will do corporate speaking events. That is $5,000. I don't mind just advertising that, because it's usually an entire day. Well, then I cover all my expenses. So that's a car, that's a flight, that's a hotel for a couple nights. So, that is what I charge for a corporate speaking event. But to go in and try to train employees what an affirmation is, no, that's not me. But to go inspire people and lift them up, yes, I love to do that. I love to do that. But I will talk to audiences who already have some kind of spiritual context, or else they won't understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
I want people who are like interested in the journey. Yeah. So anyway, friends, would love your feedback on this, and would love you to help. Would love your help sharing the show, because, I don't want to try to sell people on it. I want people to find it. I want people to go, oh, this is what I've been looking for, and, in the old days of Unity, they would say, basically like the 12 steps, attraction, not promotion. On the same token, though, Charles Fillmore boosted the radio signal illegally, by the way, from the radio tower, and got, beamed all the way to Africa. And there are churches in Africa today, on the whole continent, many different countries in Africa today, because Charles Fillmore did that. So there is a balance, like you said, Dave. There's a competence, there's an awareness, this is a value, and then, but there's not pretending, pretending there's something there when there's nothing to follow it up.
And that's what you said at the very beginning, is you said, when I said, where's the line? You said, well, it's kind of where your heart's at. It's what's the intent behind it? Is the intent to be something you're not? Or is the intent to put, kind of your best foot forward?
Yeah. And I don't, I don't want to share my message so badly that I become some kind of fake. That's just not, the name of the show is Authentic Spiritual Journey.
Yeah, it's hard to do that.
So I'm not going to, a body sculpt and whatever, just to do an ad on whatever, So, yeah. So, but friends, the message for you is, are you leading with ego, or what is your heart intention? And I've just discovered that when my heart is about being of service, when my heart is about getting people an empowering message, that we are having success. We are having success on this show. We are having success. We are in over 90 countries. We are right about 200,000 downloads. I'd love for that to be 1 million. And I know eventually it will be. Right. And I just know it's because at every step, we're asking Spirit what's ours to do. And we're staying in integrity with the things we're teaching. Right. So, what I really want to end with us thinking about together is, we are in a culture now who says what matters most is what you look like, not who you are, what you own, not what your heart's about. And, when I was thinking back, I do this pretty often, like once a year, especially around, the end of the year, I do kind of a life review, and I think about the people that have made a difference. None of the people in my life who made a real difference necessarily were people of wealth. They were people who didn't have much in the physical world, but they had a heart. They had a heart, and they had soul, and they had time, and they had patience, and they had love, and they had support, right? So it was who they were that made the difference to me. Now, obviously, having said that, well, we have to have money to live, right? So I'm thrilled for all the ways people financially support the show. And my hope for you is that, what matters to you most is your heart and soul. The money simply helps you support the things you love to support. That's not the end goal. It's not the end goal is to just look good and have all you can have. It's who you are that matters. We don't want to be all hat and no cattle. We want to be, people of substance. I love that the organizations, the people, that I financially support, I love being able to do that. But I support from a place of not wanting anything back, not looking good. Typically, the support is anonymous. I'm only mentioning it to you to say, it is so empowering to give your money to things that you support, but not so you look good, because you believe in it, So when I support, Dr. Dorsey's Orlando Minority Youth Golf Association, I just walk into his office and hand him a check. Sometimes I hand him a bag of cash. I love to do that. I love to support Dr. Dorsey and his organization, but I don't do it to look good. I do it because I believe in it, because the work he's doing is helping people live better lives. So as you listen to the news, as you're watching some of the stuff going on in the world right now, just see how the people that have sourced in the outer, see how their lives really are. And that should be enough motivation to go, you know what? I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to be run by my addiction at 50 and 60 years old. I want to be led by my heart. I want to be led by my soul. I want to be led by what I know to be right. Yeah, I want to be led by God, by this inner voice that guides me, that leads me on the, path of goodness and hope and love and acceptance. Yeah, so think about that, friends. We don't want to be like the rest of the world. We want to live lives of faith, lives that lift others up. We don't want to be all hat and no cattle. We don't want to be stuck in the ego of looking good. We want to be real. We want to be authentic. We want to be willing to be vulnerable, to cry sometimes, right? To laugh even at times. Not always trying to look good. Be real. Be authentic. Live from soul, right? And I know that you know how to do that. I don't need to give you 5 steps to live from soul. We all know. We all know. And the reason I wanted to end, with those statements is the ego is very, very tricky, and it's often, these choices are very subtle. So I'm slowing it down so you can just think into, why am I doing what I'm doing? What is my motivation? How is my life impacting others? Like what? Just think about that. Think about that, friends. Our prayer for you always is to live an authentic spiritual journey. Our prayer for you always is to live from your soul. Our prayer for you always is to know you're loved, you're connected to God, to us, to each other, to all, right? Our prayer for you always is that you live from soul. So we thank you, dear friend, as always, for joining us. We thank you for your love, for your financial support. And hey, if you got a good word for me this week, send me a little word of encouragement. I could use a good word. And I appreciate it. Sometimes I need a little support too, if you can believe that. I give out a lot and I love when I receive it. And I thank you for that. Thank you, as always, for listening and for sharing. And we will see you here next week. Blessings on the journey, dear friends.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2022, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.